Happy wife, happy life. Ooh.
Welcome to the last Teflon Tales of 2020. I have with me, and for the first time, actually, I have a guest who was a host less than 2 weeks ago. I was on the Peel podcast with Gene. Welcome, Gene.
Thank you very much, Ashwin. I'm so happy to be here. I gotta admit it's a little weird sitting on the other side of the table, and
I
this has
know.
only just begun.
Hey, it's time for you to be in the hot seat, right? So, the question I have for you, right? First off, I'm just going to read off your LinkedIn profile, right, which
Sure.
says you are an enjoyment coach, teaching people how to unblock their limiting beliefs to unlock their. And so the question really, I think that comes to mind is, I mean, first off, I haven't seen the word enjoyment coach anywhere, right?
Yeah.
But the other side of the spectrum, and just going through your profile, right? You started off as a web developer,
Yeah.
right? And
Many years ago,
many
yes, I
years ago.
was.
I
Even
think,
before a web developer, my
uh,
first thing I ever coded in was QBasic.
all right. So you're dating yourself now. But so I think the question is, and again, this goes back to the Teflon analogy, right? Clearly, there's a lot of avatars you have gone through that journey from being a web developer to quote unquote an enjoyment coach right now. So talk through what happened during that process and why an enjoyment coach.
Well, I don't think we got enough time to like backlog through all 20 years of this, nor the appropriate couch to be on. But when I was younger, um, I had skills that obviously lean. I enjoyed working on computers. I still remember our first, 386. It had a turbo button, and we could crank it up to
I remember
33,
that. Yes, yes.
33 megahertz. It was incredible, right? And I just loved building stuff. This has been always part of my DNA, I guess, is that I love building building stuff. And so I was able to do that with my fingers and building apps and building different products for people.
Mhm.
But I always knew when I started off being a developer, I'm like, one day I'm going to, run my show. Like one day I'm building up to do, I'm not just going to be a developer. And that was always kind of like the mindset I always took into each of the roles that I had. It was like, this is just for now, and we're going to see where this opens up doors. And what I always found was, the story
So,
I say.
Gene, I want to interrupt you a little bit over there again. Just going back to how and people in trying to be the best at what they are, and here
Right.
you are coming in with this mindset of this isn't the end goal. The end goal is something I'm going to discover. So, what kind of advice do you have for people who are like, okay, I want to put in the best foot forward to be the best version of myself currently,
Right.
while also trying to kind of emulate you with saying, okay, this isn't the end goal. The end goal could be something else. I need to continue discovering. How do you straddle those two?
That's for me, I look at that as being, it's really easy to straddle that because you, wherever we are, like, yes, when I was saying, oh, this was never my end goal, it's like, I always knew I was going to, I was a developer. So why not be the best that I could be by constantly trying to improve myself? Because if I came at that from this perspective of going, this isn't my end goal as far as like a career where it needs to go, well, that tells me that I need to keep like refining and adding on to my skills. It's just, this got me in the door. What other things do I have to leverage to be able to get really good at what I'm doing and understand what's the path out of here as well.
Yeah.
So
So
it's not.
I just want to give a quick shout out to one of our audience members. Hey Kirk, good to see you, and thanks for joining us.
Yes. And I see Kirk's added a few comments already. That's awesome. We have somebody at least watching. This is
Yeah.
great. So, where we're talking about being on that straddling is like at any point you should, I view that we should be striving to be the best version that we can be in that moment, knowing that the next moment's going to be a little bit different because we were better in the moment than we were previous, right? So those all things kind of stack and they take a long time. Like this journey has taken me 20 years to go, like, since I started this, my career professionally, and it's been a 20-year journey all the way through this, trying to figure out, what am I going to be when I grow up? That used to be like an underlining question, right? So I was the developer. Then I was the developer who could hold a conversation without looking at my shoes. So then I got to be in front of clients. Then I got to run a team of developers, then a cross-functional team, then a department. Then I ran I co-founded an agency called Cheeky Monkey Media, and just kept kind of doing these things, knowing that if I'm hitting problems, that's a good thing, and if I'm hitting new problems, that's an even better thing, because it means I'm learning, I'm trying new stuff. And I always had this thing that I shared with my teams that I kind of take to heart myself is, there's nothing wrong with making mistakes. I hate making the same mistakes, because that means we didn't learn anything, right? Like if we, and so I think that's why that's kind of carried through my entire career to where I am today.
So one of the things, again, reading off your LinkedIn profile, right, and looking at these three C's: the connection, the contribution, and the collaboration, it seems to be so resonant with who you are. But clearly, getting to those three C's, right, and sometimes you're more involved in, hey, I want to build content, right? So or I'm building connections, but I'm not really contributing and helping the other person. But
Yeah.
clearly, and going back to the Teflon thing, and you have to be conscious of, okay, is there collaboration going on, is there contribution going on, is there connection going on, and it's how did you arrive at these three anchor points to define who Gene is?
Right. Well, it, those words kind of came up this year came out of like a work I was doing with my coach, and those words kind of came up from it. But the most powerful for me has always been that contribution component, right?
Mhm.
Is I've always looked at my life as like, am I bringing value to somebody else, right? Like I'm here to help. My gift is to help people solve some problems or challenges in front of them. We all have that gift. We all have some marketable skill. And so it was always like, well, what am I going to be when I grow up? And I always knew that it was around delivering incredible value. I don't chase money. Like I always have believed that if I put out good value, well, that's a byproduct, right? So that's why contribution's always kind of like one of those underlying components to it. But you can't contribute if you're not connected with people, right?
Yeah.
So then you have to kind of, for me, like as a early stage version of me, I was very like thought I was very, you know, shy, and it turns out I'm not. I was just I just wasn't practiced,
Mm-hmm.
right? So then that allows me to start to connect and contribute, and that whole like collaboration component means that I need to be working with, if I'm connected with people and they're the right people, then we're going to be able to collaborate together, and that means we're contributing to all of our lives. So those are like I that's just kind of where those have come from for me.
And again, just to connect the dots over here, just for the viewers, is how I got connected to Gene is through a past guest of mine, Tom Broxham, who was on this show about
Yep.
3-4 weeks ago. And once we had finished our recording, his thing was, "Oh, I need to connect you with Gene." Right. So it's almost that trigger point, like you're saying, which is once you make yourself available to others, once
Yeah.
you show who you are, I think automatically those connections, you really don't have to go and quote unquote network yourself, right?
No.
So talk a little bit about how that journey evolved in terms of becoming this person who is giving, and as a result of that, your network like organically grows.
Yeah. It's so I think it's like anywhere else. Like if you move to a new town and you don't know anybody, you could either sit around and go, oh, this town's so clicky. Or you could be like, am I actually doing anything about this? Am I putting myself out there? Am I at least actually giving somebody the opportunity to know that I'm open for a connection, right? Like we live in a very locked down world right now, and being able to use tools like LinkedIn and other things, and being able to be on like live casts, actually have a conversation with somebody, that's, for me, that's where the juice is. And just being able to hold that door open going, okay, I've connected now with some incredible people over the last 18 months as I've been a lot more active on LinkedIn. But at no time have I ever been like, hey, well, maybe that's not totally true, but like I've never been like really in anybody's face going, hey, hire me, or hey, I have the right solution for you. It's just, hey, great content. Let's have a conversation. If we can get on a call, maybe there's an opportunity to work together to have that contribution, right? Like for myself as a coach, and you know what, as anybody out there, trying to have a you have marketable skills, be it you're an entrepreneur looking to find a new client, or you're a job seeker looking to find that next awesome job, is like you have to kind of be out there and willing to connect with people as people, right? I'm not looking for a transaction. I'm looking for an honest to goodness, like, where's my next great friend going to come from?
Yeah.
And I've
And
been very blessed to have, like, I connected with you, like Tom I talk with quite regularly. Like our first call was supposed to be 15 minutes, and like I think it ended up being like 2 hours, right? Like that those are gifts.
yeah.
And I would not have gotten any of those gifts if I hadn't, commented on something, if I hadn't connected with Tom. And if I hadn't connected with Tom, that's because I didn't comment on something else where our paths just randomly crossed, right? You just never know. Like Tom, one of Tom's things is, today's connections, tomorrow's opportunity. And when I hear that, I don't hear that as like, oh, there's a future transaction. Be like, no, there's just a future relationship, because friends work with friends.
Okay, so going back to something that you give me undue credit for, which I will not take, but you've really taken it to the next level. I was just looking at the hashtag conscious compliment,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Which again, you give credit to me, which I don't deserve. The idea might have been mine, but you're executing it to perfection, right? I've seen the number of people you have tagged with hashtag conscious compliment and being able to truly say thank you to people. It is very rare in this day and age, right? Where everybody is distracted, overwhelmed, you have all kinds of things going on in your life. And being able to take the time, recognizing somebody, calling them out, and saying thank you from the bottom of your heart. What keeps you going and why do you do that?
Oh, what keeps that going is, that's a good question. Honestly, like I love to give a compliment. I love to make sure that, I want to, when I give it, I want somebody to actually feel it, not just be like, oh, that's cool. Like I don't want it to be offhand. That's why the conscious compliment, like hashtag, like uh, you're gonna have to accept credit for that at some point, and that's just a we'll deal with that later on. But what keeps me going on it is like, maybe it's a little bit selfish, but I feel really good going through that, because I get to go back and think about all the awesome times and moments that I've had with that person. And regardless of like the state I may have been in before that, by just getting into it, I get to be, I'm being empowered by gratitude. I'm being empowered by these memories about going to, consciously choosing to go to really good places, and then craft something up that doesn't sound like I'm just blowing smoke out my ass, right? Like I want it to be more than a just, hey, good job, mate. I want to be like, this is why you mean something to me, or this is why what you did stood out so much. The more specific we can get, my hope is that the more that people will be able to be like, to accept that, right? Like not being able to accept a compliment, like that was me to a T up until like even this year. Like I would bounce them off all the time. So now being more open to it and going, oh, that feels good when somebody's like genuinely doing that. So being able to, what drives me is like giving that gift to somebody else to go, hey, you got noticed today.
Yeah, it's so true also because what you're doing actually helps the other person pay it forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like this karma circle that you're creating, which is, I mean, if you give me a compliment about something which is truly genuine, I feel like, okay, I have to pay that forward, right?
Yeah.
It's almost so. One of the things, again, going back to the Teflon thing, is you embody it in terms of doing something and then realizing that may not be the end goal and trying something else. So how do you turn off? How do you cool down quickly, right? Because you can burn both ends of the candle, and yeah, we know where that leads to.
So I guess the answer should be, I'll let you know as soon as I find out. Uh, you know what? I used to be really bad for burning myself out, because I had no problem going and then like putting the foot down a little bit further. And then it's just like, oh, shouldn't have been doing that for a month. Shouldn't have been doing that for months on end. Why am I like in a, in the past, I put myself to a point where I was just like, I broke down in my kitchen one day. I'm just like, what is going on? It was just, I didn't go to work the next day because I felt just like complete and total garbage. So what do I do now? I try to block my time out and be, overplaying the word conscious right now, but it is a choice, right? Like I can choose to step down. I can choose to do the things that are I know are important for myself. Right? For this year, it's been a lot of like exercising. I did something called the 75 hard, which is definitely not a it's not for the meek, but it's definitely a challenge. And I, take care of myself. I've found a new love for reading. I spend time with my wife and my kids, and we do that with like a purpose, right? Is like, okay, when I'm away from my desk here, like this, I'm working at home. I took over a part of my basement so that when I come here, I am purposely working. And then when I'm not working. I block the rest of it out. Yeah, exactly. Like put
Right.
time on the calendar for you. That's right, Kirk. So Kirk's just commenting along with us here, but it's totally right. Like my calendar is like I got it all blocked out. I've got like dinner time blocked on there and everything else. When I'm doing my consulting work for Canadian Men's Health Foundation, or when I'm doing my coaching stuff, or even the live cast, like it's all pre-booked. Like on Sundays, I go through and make sure that I'm set up for success, because then I'm not floundering. I also have gotten to a point where just because I have a to-do list doesn't mean it's constantly getting done. And I'm okay with only, I'm getting a lot better with going, if it's at the top, then it's important. And if it's not at the top, then it's not the most next important thing to be doing. And honestly, if I had to look at it, what's the most important thing to be doing is like investing in me. I got to be like 1% better every day in some shape or form. And that, that's a thing that allows me to push, because I can push to be like 1% better at recouping and recovering. And
Okay. Yes, I wanted to put you on a spot over here because all my previous guests have told me, "Wow, you kind of waited till the last moment to kind of put this on us."
yeah,
This is going to be easy for you, but I think it's a really fundamental question that I know I grappled with, and I've seen every single of my guests talk about their own story about how they did that. Right, which is you obviously get good at something, right? And you're good at it. You're the guru. The world looks at you. You're the expert. Your own ego gets bloated, and then you got to start something brand new where you'll suck
yeah.
initially. Right? So you have an avatar over here, which is really good. You have an avatar over here, which is like, hey, you're a newbie over here. How do you come to terms with that while you're trying to experiment with this new thing while still maintaining your quote unquote genius on the stuff that you've mastered?
And that you've already mastered. That's
Totally.
tough. That is tough. That is a tough question. Um, because that ego does sneak in sometimes, right? Like when you are, if you're switching from like what you're skilled at and you're very good at, you can kind of do in your sleep, and then you switch over to that thing that you're learning to do. I think there needs to be a break between it. You can't just like context it in from like your greatness to like your weakness, because your egos get, or maybe it's just mine, just goes, you suck at this, and why are you even doing this? You should just quit. It's just like, ugh, no, I know what you're trying to do, and I flip the script on how I interpret that from my ego. Is like when it tells me I suck, I'm just like, well, I give it that term of like that unemotional father who was actually just trying to get you to like be the best you can. He just doesn't know any better other than to say, you suck, boy. You could play way better out there. Be like, no, that's just it, me being pushed back and making friends with that part of that ego, right? And as well, like part of that space is like actually have some space between doing like what you're good at and like giving yourself a little bit of time to context switch.
Yeah.
I think has really helped me be in that. And as well, finding for myself, learning to be okay with, because this coaching stuff is new to me since the summertime, but it's been, how can I basically, I look at my board and I've got a few things that I'm working on every single week. So it's like, what's the one thing that I can be 1% better on? Right. And I know, like, I just keep repeating that, and to the point that it actually becomes like that it's part of my identity, and my subconscious is like, it's okay to be 1%. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay that this goes wrong. And it just takes practice and consistency. But eventually what happens for me and for what I've seen with others who do it is that it takes that edge off of the,
Yeah.
oh, are you sucking at that? Be like, of course I am. I'm only this is month 3. Be like, we got so many. Like, just imagine what it's going to be like at month 24 or even 18 or 10 years from now, right? Like that's the excite that you could learn to figure out how to make it exciting. Going, this is the worst that I'm going to be, and if I've done it for more than one day, then this is also the best that I've ever been at this as well. And
I
just
mean,
getting to have a little bit of fun with it from that perspective, and like owning that, and knowing that you're going to tell yourself some shitty things at some point. Get over it. Like, but make the choice to get over it, right? Don't sit in it. Allow it to happen. Those feelings are natural. That they're not wrong, and they're not right. They just are. Sit through them, but don't stay in them, right? Like, that's, the highs and the lows. Don't stay there, but use them and understand that they're trying to tell you something.
so two things that you mentioned, which I think are provide great perspective. One is context switching, right? Which is give yourself the time and the context switch. The other thing that you mentioned, which I think you should patent this, is, hey, this is the best you've ever been at this, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing, right? I mean, yeah, I start painting, I suck at it, but it's the best I've ever been because I've never done it, right? So, one final question, right? For somebody who is stuck in this imposter syndrome, and what will the world think? What will the society think? What advice do you have to how do they make that first step? Because making the first step is the hardest, right? But after that, it hopefully gets easier, as you and I have
Yeah.
seen. How do you get them past that self critic
Ooh.
in them that's preventing them from making that first step?
Well, if I'm sitting there with the person, then I guess allow the critic to have its like moment in the sun for a minute, and be like, all right, listen to, like, just like kind of focus and do some deep breathing and listen. Let it berate you for a moment, and then go, is there a possibility that it's wrong?
Mhm.
Is there a possibility? And if the answer is yes, there's a possibility, then let's start digging around what that possibility could look like, right? Like, it comes down to mind shifting your mindset, right? Is like, I can either choose to stay in that state and get kind of like crumpled by it, or I can choose to go, okay, is there a possibility? And if there is, then I know I need to take at least, what's the smallest little step that I can do? And sometimes that's really hard if you don't know the answer to what I want.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you want, then it's really hard to take a step in what you might get trapped in the whole, am I taking a step in the right direction? Be like, you don't know, but what we can just all agree to is you don't like where you're at right now, so just take a step, and then we'll find out later on, when you actually have, you've given yourself the permission to ask for what you want, even to yourself. Then we can start going, okay, your North Star is over here, so we're going to start moving your steps. But if you don't know where that North Star is yet, and you know that you don't like where your feet are at right this moment,
Take the step.
move them,
Yeah.
move them.
Very, very, very true. So again, thanks, Gene. Again, thanks for being the last guest of 2020 on the Teflon Tales. Good luck and stay safe. And I'm waiting for the conscious compliment.
Well, it's good. We'll get another one out tonight. Sometimes they go a few days in between, but I wanted to try to get as many out in December. I think it's something I'm just going to stick with. But Ashwin, thank you so much for having me on your show, man, and for putting me on the other side of this seat. It's I can understand now what you were saying about how it feels a little bit different, because it
I
does.
know. I feel relaxed. Like when I was in your show, it was like, wow, I'm on the hot seat right now. So again, thank you, Gene.
All right, have a great holidays, and we'll talk to you, I'm sure, before the new year.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, Ashwin, thank you very much again.